Hi friends, welcome to the 2023 Halloween special. I just want to give a quick shout out to those who reached out and provided their stories for me to share with you all. It's always kind of brave to put yourself out there, so thank you in advance, and I remind everyone to always be kind in the comments, because we never know what someone else is going through. But get relaxed, get ready, because here comes some spooky stories. Thank you and enjoy. My friends and I left early one day to go down to the lakefront to have a cookout. There were about a dozen of us. Some of us brought food, while others chipped in for drinks. Back then, there wasn't a free way to cross. It was all shrubs, willows, and big rocks. We often came here, and that day was no different. We each took up our task of finding sticks and other burnables to get a fire going. Once settled, I sat with a couple of elders when I noticed off in the distance a couple of native guys coming out of the train tunnel. They wore no shirts, just light-colored pants. They were nice looking, of course, so I noticed. They started walking towards us, but veered off to our left. One of the elders leaned in and whispered, "They're staring at us." I looked back over in their direction and noticed they were. So I asked my friend Frankie to go over and ask them if they wanted a drink or something to eat, and he agreed. Frankie was only gone for moments before returning back, exclaiming, "They're gone." I replied, "No, they're right." Oh, what the hell? They were gone. We looked high and low, all over the area we'd last seen the men, but nothing. We were all in shock, I think, and we didn't do much partying. We just sat quietly contemplating what we saw. As the sun set, we decided to just go home. We had plans to stay late into the night, but the elder of us said we should take it as a warning and just go home, so we did. Everyone who was with us saw them, and they were just gone. I have no doubt in my mind that these men were from a different time. To start, I should note that I was in a family that is spiritual, and I was taught to embrace spiritual gifts, not to fear or suppress them, and that paranormal encounters are usually nothing to fear. And I don't. They fascinate me more than anything, but if I do not feel that they are malevolent, then I'm not concerned about them at all. So in 2014, when we decided to buy a home built in the mid-1930s, I noticed the home was not completely vacant, but I could read the energy and felt it was benign, so I was not deterred at all. I should also add that I can hear, see, and feel ghosts if they wish to communicate, as I am clairvoyant. And the spirits in the home noticed that right away, so my first encounter with the ghost happened the first night we slept in the home. Exhausted from moving, we went to bed late into the night, and I woke up to the sound of footsteps marching across the wooden floor towards my room, and a girl who sounded mad said, "Mother, Mother." The footsteps had come from my daughter's room directly across the room from my room, so I naturally thought it was her disturbing my sleep, and I sat up in bed a bit irritated and looked towards my bedroom door and said, "What?" There was no one in my room or standing in my doorway, and everyone, including my daughter, were sound asleep, also exhausted from the move. I decided this could be a dream. I was sleeping after all, but I have never heard a voice in my dreams that made me wake up. I usually just stay dreaming, but I was exhausted, so I mark it down to a dream, most likely. But it happened again and again. Each time those angry footsteps coming from my daughter's room and marching into mine to shout, "Mother, Mother," not stopping until I sat up in bed and said, "What?" And each time it happened, everyone was sound asleep. After about 4 to 6 days, the voice stopped waking me up, and life went on as usual until a month or two later. It was early in the morning and the sun had just come up. I didn't mean to wake up that early, so I was struggling to try to go back to sleep. My husband was fast asleep next to me. Then I heard the voices of two men talking. I could make out the sounds of the voices. They both sounded like they had thick southern accents, but it was coming out mumbled and jumbled at first. I'm in Texas, and the town we moved to is a rural farming town, so I'm not thinking anything odd about this. It is probably some neighbors outside talking, or something along those lines. The voices seemed to be getting closer to the house. They still sounded muffled, so I'm not able to make out what they were saying, and I'm just hoping they pass by quickly so they do not make my insomnia worse by standing outside my window talking. Suddenly, I hear the voices in my room, and standing between the wall and my side of the bed, just as loud as it would be if I were face to face chatting with someone. I move towards the middle of the bed next to my husband. He is still sleeping, so I know he cannot hear them, or they would have woken him up. After I moved towards my husband, one of the voices said, "Here's the one I was telling you about." And as crazy as this next part sounds, I heard someone about an inch from my face make a raspberry sound, like the sound people make when they put their mouth on the belly of a baby and blow hard to make the baby laugh. And I felt a quick blast of air in my face. Not a strong one, but strong enough that you felt the air hit. This caused me to sit up abruptly, and I looked to the right side of the bed where the voices came from, and I whispered loudly and firmly, "Would you please go away? I'm trying to sleep." The voices stopped immediately, and those voices have not returned since. It would be impossible for me to write down every incident that has taken place over the past 9 years without writing a book, so I'm just focusing on the most recent and most notable ones that have taken place. The next instance takes place with my husband, who is a veteran and is very scientific-minded. He doesn't believe in ghosts or the afterlife. He's an atheist, and he believes that when you die, that is the end of things. You're just gone. His computer station was set up in our dining room. That is by the kitchen, and he faces the kitchen. One night, he raced into the bedroom where I was watching TV, and he looked a bit shaken up as he told me about a very strange thing that just happened. He went on to say that he was on his computer, and with his peripheral vision, he saw me walk into the kitchen. Moments later, he looked up to see what I was doing and realized the kitchen was empty. I was not in there. No one was. Eager to make sense of things, he asked if I had gone in there and came back. I assured him I had been watching TV and I had not left the room at all. He decided that maybe he had been at the computer too long and misunderstood what he saw, then left the room. Months would pass, and then one night, while he was at his computer, he saw someone he thought was me walk into the kitchen again. The kitchen light was off this time. He expected the light to come on, and when it did not come on, he called out to what he believed was me and asked, "Why don't you turn on the light so you can see better?" There was no reply, so he looked at what appeared to be the outline of a human body that was standing in the kitchen, and he freaked. He had no explanation for what he clearly saw, and he came into the room I was in and was shaken and startled. He explained what had happened and how clear the outline was. He was shaken up so bad that he had to keep the kitchen and dining room light on for the rest of the night. When my husband took a job where he worked overnight, there had been many nights that I was home by myself, all night until the next morning. And I've never enjoyed being alone during hours where I feel more vulnerable to potential crime. Hearing the sound of footsteps walking through the house had been an almost nightly event. And when my husband worked overnights, this could be unsettling because a few times I was sure someone had broken into the house. And thankfully, it was just the ghost and not a break-in. On one occasion not too long ago, I was in my room with my door closed, and I saw the handle of my bedroom door begin to move. The handle is a straight handle and not a knob, so you can see it very easily when it's in motion. In this case, I was alone, and it was the middle of the night, and my dogs and cats were all accounted for and sound asleep. So I called the police to come and check out the entire home. It was embarrassing, but I was happy to know that no one broke in. I only wonder if the cops thought I was crazy or something. After this, the ghost decided it might be fun to pound on my bedroom door loudly when I was sleeping, which made me sit up in bed in pure shock and terror, once again thinking someone had broken in. Imagine that really loud knock the police use when they are knocking on someone's front door, only it was louder than that. The good news this time is that no police were called. My dogs and my cats sleep with me, and my dogs bark like crazy over any little noise. So they could not have heard it, which means it had to be paranormal. These knocks happened a few times, loud enough to wake me up, but my dogs did not hear them. Many people may wonder if I dreamed it, and of course I wondered that too. Then one day while I was wide awake and my husband was home, it happened again. This time my husband had gone into the bathroom to take a shower, and about 5 minutes later, I heard someone banging on the bathroom door. At first, I thought he might be hitting the door to get my attention, but the dogs could not hear it, and so I knew it was not him. After he was done showering, I asked him if he had hit the door or the wall of the shower, and confirmed the noise did not come from him. The last one I'm sharing is probably the creepiest of them all, and the one I found unnerving. We purchased a new king-size mattress just years ago, and it was a store purchase, not a used mattress. It has no tears or holes in it anywhere, which makes this next event unexplainable. There were times when I was trying to fall asleep that I would feel something tap on my foot from inside the mattress. I would move my foot to another part of the bed, and moments later, it would begin tapping on me again. It did not do this every single night, but this happened for several months, and I could tell that the tapping was coming from under the surface of the top of the mattress, and there was no explanation for what it could be. One morning, I was trying to go back to bed, and the tapping began. I moved my foot several times, and each time, the tapping would quickly locate my foot from within the mattress and start tapping again. Annoyed with this game, I took one of my pillows and used it to put my feet up on at the end of my bed, and I'm thinking this would fix the problem. I won't feel any tapping with my feet high up on a pillow. Moments after I laid back down, I heard in my right ear a sinister hiss and a male voice say, "Hello," right next to my ear. And now I was just mad. I sat up and said, "No, no, no, get out of my house. Get out of my house now and do not ever come back." This was clearly not one of the benign energies that came with the house, and I suspected my daughter accidentally let them in when she used a Ouija board, and did not follow the safety protocol for that. But it was not invited by me. It did not have permission to be here, so I had to cleanse the home again and kick anything out that was not benign, cleanse any attachments, etc. Thankfully, the tapping that came out of my mattress stopped, and no more whispers either. The overall activity is at a manageable level in the home, but nothing that is bothersome, and I don't really pay much attention to it. Perhaps there might be more for me to tell you next year. I was working in this old theater in New England one summer called the Cumpston Hall. It was built in the 1900s and rumored to be haunted because the building's namesake, Dr. Charles Cumpston, allegedly threw himself out of a third-floor window, despite being confined to a wheelchair. There were rumors that either his wife or his mistress did it. The theater actually had big murals of his wife, children, and mistress on the ceiling. It was an old opera house and still had the old top hat holders under the seat. Because of Charles' handicap, his seat was in the front row on the right aisle. So one night, a group of my friends and I decided to use a Ouija board in the middle of the stage. When we entered the theater, it was dark except for the ghost light. As the name suggests, it's used in theaters to keep ghosts away. All theaters have one, and they're left on all night when the theater is empty. We started asking it the typical questions, such as, "Is someone there?" That sort of thing. When someone asked, "Where are you?" the planchette started moving off of the board and across the stage, directly to the old man's seat. At that moment, the seat dropped with a thud. We quickly said goodbye, ending the session, before running out and screaming. The seats were like those stadium chairs where the bottom part flips up so it makes it easier for people to pass. All of the seats in the theater were up, and only that one fell at that moment. I had just given birth to my daughter in 2011 at the time. I was living with my grandmother, who had sadly passed away shortly before her birth. When my aunt gained control of her estate, she kicked me out. I was homeless and due at any time when I heard about a program they have in California where you can live in a 2-bedroom apartment for 3 months. During the 3 months, you have to save 80% of your income, and at the end of the 3 months, they return your money and give you up to 4 weeks to find your permanent living situation. So I thought this was perfect. It allowed me to save money and have a place for just me and my daughter. So I applied and was given an apartment. I moved in during the middle of June, but by the first week of July, I was out of there. The first night I spent there, I felt like somebody was staring at me. It was a weird feeling, but I was just so excited to have my own place that I ignored it and went to sleep. The third night, I got up in the middle of the night with my daughter, who at the time was about 2.5 months old. She wanted a bottle, so I left her laying long ways on my bed, which was pushed against the wall, before going into the kitchen. I was gone no more than 5 minutes max. When I returned to the room, my daughter was gone. I couldn't see her, but I could hear her cooing happily. I followed her voice to discover that she was under the bed. Not only was she under the bed, but her head was towards the wall and her feet were facing the open end of the bed. I couldn't understand how she got down there. There was no way she could have positioned herself like that. She was only 2.5 months old and we lived alone. So I pulled her out, my daughter smiling, not understanding why I was so unsettled. I looked around the room, and of course I didn't see anything. I questioned my own sanity. I thought if my daughter had fallen off the bed and hit the floor, which wasn't carpeted, it would have really hurt her. She would have cried out in pain, but I heard nothing prior to finding her. I looked my daughter over for any marks or bruises, and she was fine. The next morning I had an appointment, so I went to take a shower. I placed my daughter into her car seat on the bathroom floor, so I could see her through the glass door of the shower. While I was washing my face, I felt like someone was right behind me. I felt like someone was outside of the shower next to my baby. So I moved quickly, sliding the door open, and no one was there, just my baby, who was content. We got dressed and left, returning home late that night. One of the great things about this complex is their 24-hour security. They walked through the corridors often. As I was entering my apartment one evening, I just felt a heaviness out of nowhere and a sudden wave of sadness. I was fine seconds before. I brushed it off as exhaustion since I was up early. I grabbed my daughter, who was already asleep, and laid down in the bedroom. While relaxing, I got that feeling again, like someone was staring at me, this time from the closet. I picked up my baby and quickly went into the living room, where I fell asleep. Around 12:30 that night, I was startled out of my sleep by screams coming from my daughter. She was in her car seat with her back completely arched. I panicked and started checking her over for anything that could cause this type of pain cry. I removed her PJs and there was nothing, but she was completely stiff. Her back was arched and she was bent in half, backwards, staring at a corner of the living room. I tried to move her. I moved my whole body while holding her, but she wouldn't budge. I didn't want to hurt her. I couldn't figure out what was going on. Her gaze never left that corner of the living room. I looked at the corner and cried out to God, "Please, she's a baby. Whatever I did, punish me. But please, God, whatever this is, don't let it get my baby." I've never been so scared in my life. When I tried to move her, her body would jerk back into the position she was in before, just staring at that corner. I'd never seen a baby do that before. I screamed out, "Whatever this is, if you want to mess with someone, mess with me. Leave my daughter alone." The security guard could hear me yelling from outside. I could see him trying to peek in through the window. Then, just as fast as it started, my daughter's body went limp and she stopped crying. I quickly opened the blinds, the windows, and the front door. I was not going to be in that apartment. I ran out of the door and told the security guard something scared me in the apartment. The guard replied, "Yeah, I get a bad feeling every time I walk by there. I'm surprised that you're in there by yourself." I replied, "Why?" And he said, "Before you moved in, I could hear things moving around in there, but there was no one living there. It kind of freaked me out, but I thought it was just my imagination." I decided that was it. I was out. I had a thought in the apartment to go in the spare bedroom. Something told me to go here. Whatever it was that was tormenting my daughter would not go in that room. I stayed here all night. For some reason, I knew we were going to be okay. The rest of the apartment felt heavy, but that room was different, like a load off my shoulders. I was still afraid, but safer. I knew whatever was out in that living room was right there by the door. It would not go into the room, but it waited. I don't know how I knew that, but I did. As soon as the sun came up and there was light, I was out of there. I stayed a total of 13 days. I packed up my things and moved in with my father that same day. I had a friend who also lived in the complex, and I went to visit her the day I moved out. There was a couple who lived directly across from me, but one floor up. They were always very nice. The 2 weeks I lived there, I never heard them yelling or fighting. They always seemed very loving. While I was visiting my friend, I heard the lady yelling at her husband. She was outside in the doorway before going back inside when she saw me watching. I noticed her husband was holding his side. I just thought maybe he hurt himself. He leaned against the railing while walking downstairs. I was watching the whole situation. He walked all the way to the alleyway where he typically parked his car. I saw his shadow getting into the car, then I heard him peel out. I walked out of the apartment to the stairs when I noticed blood. I returned to my friend's apartment scared. Then all of a sudden, we heard the car skid, then crash. The couple got into an argument and she had stabbed him. He got in his car, passed out behind the wheel, and crashed his car into a tree, which killed him. I was wondering what the hell was going on. This couple did a complete 180. They were fine, and then they weren't. We weren't allowed to leave the apartments after that due to the police investigation. I had to stay the night and was a wreck. I was scared and shaking all night, and I haven't been back since that day. The wife was arrested but not charged with anything. I'm not sure what she told them. I think whatever malevolent presence was in my apartment might have attacked that couple as well. For weeks after, the woman was distraught. I heard her telling another neighbor the day of the accident that she didn't know why she did it. She couldn't remember why they argued, and she didn't know what happened. Every now and then, the events replay in my mind. It all just feels so evil. After I got out of there, I haven't experienced anything like that since. One of these days, I want to return to the apartment with an EVP recorder and record outside to see if anything comes through. But I will never enter that apartment again. I was working at Cracker Barrel at the time, and I lived in a different city. Cracker Barrel is in Spanish Fort, and I lived 15 minutes from there in Daphne. After a fight with my girlfriend at the time, I decided to walk the miles back to the apartment instead of her giving me a ride. We both worked there and had gotten off at the same time that night. Normally, we just took one vehicle because it was pointless to take each of our cars. So I happened to be carpooling to work with her, not anticipating an argument to occur. When we closed, it was well after 10 p.m. There were hardly any cars on the road, and I had two options. Take the interstate, I-10, which is notorious for deadly crashes, or take a back road, the safer option, which was a road called Highway 90. It's a 2-lane highway, one lane going in one direction, and the other lane going in the other direction. There was not a median between, just a yellow line. The road wasn't the scary part of anything. It wasn't the 1 hour and 5 minute walk after a 15-hour shift. It wasn't the random cars that would drive past. It was a combination of the darkness and that overwhelming hair in your arm and the back of your neck standing straight up. Everything in your being is screaming you're in danger, except I couldn't see anything. I kept looking around with my heart beating out of my chest and me entering fight or flight mode with an invisible threat. At least at the moment I was looking, they were invisible. I kept walking and got about 2 miles in. It's nearing 11 to 11:30 p.m. I keep getting that feeling like someone is following me, but every time I turn around, I can't see anyone. Now, to paint a picture, there was one stoplight on this road before making it into the city that I lived in. There was a traffic light at the beginning where Highway 90 and Highway 181 meet, and there is a midway point between Spanish Fort and Daphne. The midway point has a traffic light, and there is one more traffic light when you reach the city limits of Daphne. I didn't get this feeling prior to the midway traffic light. Shortly after the midway traffic light, there is one random dimly lit area where there is an electric box behind a fence gate. Other than that, there are no street lights. It is pitch black, and on either side are woods, with the occasional house or random business that did not have lights on. So trying to go nocturnal was not in my favor. After I had passed the midway traffic light, before I got to the electric box lamppost, is when I started to get that uneasy feeling. I turned around and looked behind me, to no avail. I couldn't see anything. I shrugged it off the best I could and kept walking. At this point, exhaustion had set in, and I had been on my feet nearly 17 hours. I was hungry, as I had not eaten in nearly 25 hours, thirsty, and was just ready to sit down somewhere. I knew that walking was stupid, and I should have just taken the car ride, despite the argument. But in that moment, I felt safer walking home in the dark than riding 10 minutes in a car with my girlfriend. I just needed the air to clear my head. So flash forward, I'm walking, and I legit have the fight or flight mode that has been nagging at me for about 7 minutes. I would hear scuffle sounds like shoes hitting the asphalt, as though someone was walking. I would stop to see if there were my shoes, and the sound would continue. I would whip my head around, and I wouldn't be able to see anything, so I resumed walking, only to have that subconscious voice in your head say, "You're in danger." And when I turned around this time, sure enough, there was someone there. They were walking behind me about 200 feet away. I could only see an outline as a porch light did not illuminate the entire portfolio of the individual. I turned around and picked up speed. I was putting distance between me and this person, and now my eyes were fixated on where the person just was. As I began to pick up speed, so did the individual. I could hear more distinctly the sound of their shoes hitting the asphalt. I turned around, and they were closer to me, and I made the split decision to confirm what I was dreading as truth. I decided to cross the road and walk on the same side of the street as the lamppost over the electrical box, as a way to see if they followed and crossed the road too. Then I knew for sure they were following me. I made the cross over the 2-lane highway over to the other side and continued to walk. The feeling subsided for a moment as the individual did not cross over too. I started to slow down my pace as I'm tired. My throat is dry, and although I want to be home, I'm still so tired from work that I have no energy left. It's this moment that I realized I made a mistake. I turn around and the individual did cross the road, and on top of that, I can now see it was a guy, and I take off running. The fight or flight gave me the energy to run at full speed. However, the moment I started running was the moment the guy started running too. I grabbed the box cutter knife I have in my pocket and flung it open. I grabbed my cell phone and called my roommate Lizzie to come and pick me up. I told her I didn't have time to explain and to call the cops. She grabbed the keys and my girlfriend asked what she was doing. Lizzie told her what I told her, which was someone is following me and I need help. I told them call the cops if you're not going to make it in the next 5 minutes. My girlfriend and Lizzie hopped in my girlfriend's car and they took off down Highway 90. It took them 3 minutes as they sped like the Indianapolis Speedway race. In the 3 minutes I had hung up with them and turned my attention to the dude that was now 50 feet away from me. I held up my knife and I yelled at him to back off or I'd stab him. At this moment, I saw the lamppost and I made a run for it, knowing that if I saw who this person was, I could give a description. I got to the lamppost and had the knife ready to attack. I put my back against the fence gate and was completely illuminated by the lamp, and I waited in attack mode. I called Lizzie back and told her where I was, and that if I yell out a description, remember every detail as you can. It wasn't but a moment later that I saw the headlights of my girlfriend's car. I stepped forward to see where the guy was at and to get in the car, but he wasn't behind me anymore, and he had crossed over to the other side of the road. I got in the vehicle and the guy was crossing over back to the side that the lamppost was on. My girlfriend sped up and honked at him before speeding off. Needless to say, gut instincts and those fight or flight feelings are real. And although I was safe, things could have ended a lot different. Whoever that guy is, I have not seen him since, nor did I ever walk home again. Hi friends, if you made it this far, thank you so much for watching. If you found this to be entertaining, please consider giving the video a thumbs up to let YouTube know you want more from me. And if you're not subscribed yet, you should because we would love to have you under the ash tree. Thank you to the viewers who submitted stories. I appreciate your time and experience in allowing me to be the host of your spooky story. Thank you to the audience who listened to their creepy tales. We all appreciate your time. I hope you all have a happy Halloween. Please stay safe out there. For now, we must part ways. I will be back soon with our usual programming, so as always, I will see you in the next one. Bye, friends.